What's up, y'all? I'm Tom, and this is Like a Math Class. In this video, we are going to complete the square of a quadratic expression. Actually, no, we're not. Completing the square is extra convoluted. Yes, there's a space for it in mathematics when you're trying to find the quadratic formula, but for all of your purposes, you do not need to complete the square. Let me show you how to complete the square the easy way. All right, so to complete the square, what we're really trying to do when we're trying to complete the square is we're trying to get to what's called the vertex form. The vertex form is simply when we have y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. And all this is telling us is that h is the x value of your vertex and k is the y value of your vertex. So hence the phrase, the vertex form. We also had two other forms that we have talked about in the past. We have what's called the factored form, and the factored form simply says y equals a times x minus m times x minus n. This would be our factored form. And we also have what's called our standard form. And our standard form says y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Now the reason I wanted to talk about all three of these things is because if you notice between all three forms, besides the y and the x, there's one thing that's always the same. This value out front here is always the same variable. And that's because it's always the same no matter what form you're using. So if here we're looking at a factored form, we have an imaginary 1 outside here, right? Our a value. So that means this is our a. So as we start moving towards our vertex form, we know already that we already have a 1 right there in front of it. Now, how do we find the vertex in standard form? Well, if you recall, if you've looked at the parabola or the graph of a quadratic, the vertex is always directly in the middle of your two x-intercepts. And we know our x-intercepts are going to be x equals 2 and x equals 4, right? We've seen that these things are always the opposite of this using the Null Factor Law. Then how do we get to the middle of this? Well, quite simply, the x value for the vertex is just going to be the average of those. 2 plus 4 divided by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Look at that, x value of the vertex. So let's call this 3. So our x value of the vertex, the x value of the vertex. Now, notice here, in our factored form, we always have these as minus. So when we have our x value is positive 2, when we drop it into here, m is positive 2, so we've got x minus a positive 2, which is x minus 2, right? So same thing up here. If we've got x minus h, x minus a positive 3 is going to be x minus 3. Y equals, so far, 1 times x minus 3. All right, so now, how do we find our k? If I want to know what the y value is for any given x value for a function, I take that x value and I drop it back into my function. So if I want to find what is this k value out here, what is the y value of the vertex, I just put 3 back into here. So now I'm going to say y of the vertex is equal to 1 times 3 minus 2 times 3 minus 4. So that equals 3 minus 2 is 1 times 1 times negative 1. So we end up with a value of negative 1. So now here we've got k plus k. So k is now a negative 1. So plus a negative 1 means we have minus 1. Oh, I almost forgot. Oh my goodness, I almost forgot the square there. But this is now our function as a completed square. All we've done is found the middle of those two intercepts. We could even look at this through the standard form, and we could still find this if we know, because we know in the standard form, the axis of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a. Let's find a standard form equation, right? Let's consider this in standard form equation. So that would be y equals x squared minus 6x plus 8. So in this case, if we were trying to complete the square using the standard form, our axis of symmetry says the x value of the vertex is going to be a negative 6, divided by 2 times whatever our a value is, divided by 2 times whatever our a value is, which in this case is 1. So x is going to equal, well, a negative and a negative is a positive, so 6 divided by 2 is 3. And if we take 3 and we drop it back in here, you know what you're going to get? Of course you do. It's going to be -1. So either way, whether you're using the factored form and find the midpoint of your two x-intercepts, or you use the standard form and you just find the axis of symmetry, then either one of those two things, you drop it back into the equation you've got your vertex form. You've completed the square without having to complete the square, without having to do all of that mess. So this is the way that you want to complete the square. Now, in another video, I'll show you why we complete the square, how the quadratic formula was built using completing the square. It wasn't some magical formula, but really, for all intents and purposes, this is how you complete the square. If you like this tip, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next video.